I remember the moment the light died in the sky. It was not nightfall that took it, nor the shadow of an enemy ship blotting out the firmament. It was something deeper, something within me that faltered first. I was born beneath the radiance of the Emperor's glory, shaped by gene-forged perfection, sculpted to be more than mortal. Yet even angels bleed when the stars grow cold. They told me we were immortal in purpose, unyielding in faith. But purpose is a fragile thing when you know your death has already been written. I have seen the sigils burn behind my eyes, seen the Emperor's face flicker through the haze of pain, and I have heard the whisper that no Astartes dares to speak, that even his angels are afraid to die. If this story finds you, know it is not written for glory. It is confession, a last transmission from a dying soul who once thought himself incorruptible. Perhaps the Vox will carry these words beyond the dust of this world, to someone who still believes angels cannot fall. Before we descend any further into the void, if you find meaning in the stories of those who fight and die beneath the shadow of the Imperium, then share this memory, carry it forward and let others hear the echo. You do not need to swear loyalty or light a candle in his name. Just stay with me. Listen, for the light is fading, and I have little time left before the silence takes me. The drop pod screamed as it fell through the atmosphere, its hull shuddering beneath the kiss of friction fire. Inside I waited in silence, bolter clutched across my chest, heart beating not with fear but with something older. A memory, maybe, of what it felt like to breathe air that wasn't poisoned by war. The Vox crackled with the voice of the chaplain, his words folded into static prayer. By his will we fall, by his will we rise. It was the same litany I had heard 1,000 times, yet tonight it felt hollow. I watched as the light from the viewport turned from blue to blood red. The world below was already burning. We hit the ground with the force of a god's fist. The impact cracked the earth open, hurling dust and debris into the crimson haze. My harness released with a hiss, servos whining as I stepped into the choking air. The city before us was a carcass, its manufactorums vomiting smoke, its spires broken like teeth. The stench of promethium and corpses filled my lungs, filtered through the helm's rebreather. I felt the familiar weight settle over me, the sense that I had walked into this ruin before, in some other life. Brother Marius moved beside me, his armor scarred and blackened, the winged teardrop of our chapter still visible beneath layers of ash. The signal's faint, he said through the Vox. Command's in disarray. I nodded, though I already knew. Command was always in disarray. The Imperium did not wage wars anymore. It devoured itself in ritual destruction, pretending it was order. We advanced through the skeletal remains of a hab block, bolters raised, eyes searching. Civilians darted through the rubble, thin and silent as ghosts. Some carried the bodies of children. Others clutched icons of the Emperor so tightly that blood ran down their hands. None looked at us directly. To them we were not saviors, we were omens. Angels of the end come to finish what the heavens had begun. The first enemy contact came before the hour turned. Orc warbands, crude and monstrous, swarming the streets with engines roaring and weapons blazing. Their laughter was a storm of madness. Marius roared our counter-cry, his voice a thunderous hymn. I fired into the tide, each bolt round a burst of holy light tearing through green flesh and crude armor. But even as I fought, a strange calm filled me. Every movement felt preordained, every kill already written in the book of endings. It was as if the Emperor himself had traced my path across this battlefield before I was born. When the last of them fell, silence returned, an unnatural, heavy silence. The smoke drifted low, carrying the stink of burning oil and blood. I knelt beside a fallen orc, its eyes still open, its mouth twisted into a snarl that looked almost human. They do not fear death, I murmured, not realizing I had spoken aloud. They cannot, Marius replied. They are beasts. They have no souls, I wanted to agree. But somewhere deep within, a voice whispered otherwise. Every creature that kills, that bleeds, that looks to the stars in defiance of extinction, does it not bear some fragment of the divine? The thought was heresy, and yet it would not leave me. Our orders came through the Vox at last, distorted and delayed. We were to secure the promethium reserves along the eastern manufactorum, hold position until the Mechanicus established their excavation sites. They spoke of relics buried beneath the city, of data scripts and machine gods slumbering in the rock. It was madness, but then all faith begins as madness. We marched on through the twilight, our boots crunching glass and bone. The ground shook with distant detonations, the sky a wounded red. Somewhere above, an Imperial cruiser split apart in orbit, scattering its burning fragments like meteors across the horizon. One of those fragments tore through the clouds, trailing a line of light that reflected in Marius's visor. "A sign," he said, his voice low. "The Emperor watches." "Or warns," I replied. He looked at me then, and though the helm hid his expression, I could feel the weight of his stare. "You've been strange since Baal, brother." "The dreams again?" "Not dreams," I said quietly. "Memories. Of something I can't name." He said nothing more, but I could feel his unease. Among the Blood Angels, dreams were never just dreams. They were echoes of our Primarch's death, of the black rage that haunted our lineage. But what stirred within me felt different, colder, more certain. We reached the manufacturing perimeter just as night swallowed the ruins. The servitors' glow lamps flickered weakly in the dust-choked air. I could hear the chant of the engine seers, their voices mechanical and fervent. "Omnissiah, guide the hand, sanctify the circuit, purge the impurity." The words rolled over me like a tide of static faith. I turned my gaze skyward. The smoke parted for a moment, revealing the stars, distant, dim, trembling. And I felt it then, a pulse beneath my armor like a heartbeat that was not my own. It was faint, but it was there, calling from beyond the veil of the void. Marius spoke again, his voice reverent. "Do you feel it? The Emperor's hand upon this place?" I wanted to answer yes. I wanted to believe the warmth that touched my soul was his light. But deep down, I knew it was something else entirely, something older, waiting beneath the iron and ash. The wind shifted, carrying a whisper through the broken city, a sound that could have been the breath of dying men or the voice of a god. My helm's auspex flickered. For an instant I thought I saw a figure standing atop the ruins, wings of fire unfurled, eyes of molten gold. Then it was gone. I tightened my grip on the bolter and whispered the prayer I had long forgotten. "If I am to die, let it be for truth, not illusion." The words burned my throat like holy oil, and somewhere in the darkness, something answered. The voice was faint at first, a tremor carried on the wind, but I could feel it crawl beneath the seals of my armor, vibrating along the bones the genesmiths had reforged in the Emperor's image. I looked across the wasteland, the manufactorum's towers groaning like dying beasts as the ground trembled again. The Vox sputtered static, then silence. I heard Brother Marius mutter a curse before thudding off toward the comms relay, servos whining with each heavy stride. I followed, my senses sharpened by the tension that precedes revelation or death, often the same thing. We reached the relay, its antenna snapped in half, its base buried beneath twisted metal. The smell of burnt circuitry mixed with the acrid tang of ozone. Marius crouched, tracing the symbols etched into the wreckage with a gauntleted finger. "This wasn't orc work," he said. I knew it too. The orcs smashed. They didn't carve. The markings were too precise, too deliberate, an arcane geometry that made my vision blur when I stared too long. The wind howled through the open streets, carrying whispers that seemed to echo the hum of the dying machinery. I felt a weight in my chest as if the air itself resisted each breath. Marius rose, his armor clanking, and said, "The tech priest will want to see this." But the words felt small against the vastness of what lay beneath that moment. There was knowledge here, something ancient and terrible that hummed in resonance with the flaw in our blood. We moved on, every step feeling heavier than the last. The streets narrowed, the walls leaning in as if to listen. Above us, banners of the Imperial Aquila hung in tatters, their wings torn, their twin heads bowed. The people here had worshipped in silence. Now even silence had abandoned them. I saw the remnants of their prayers scrawled in soot along the walls. "Protect us, O Emperor, from your angels." The irony cut deeper than any blade. When we reached the eastern line, the rest of the squad was already there. Brother Callion's armor was splashed with gore, his helmet off, eyes distant. He'd always been the quiet one, his faith deeper than most, but even faith can fracture when the world becomes a reflection of hell. He looked up as I approached. "They're coming again," he said simply. The ground began to quake, the sound rising like a growl from the planet's throat. Orc engines roared to life beyond the smog. I took my place beside him, the air thick with the smell of oil and fire. Marius recited a battle hymn over the Vox, his voice steady but strained. I could hear the doubt in its undertone, the same doubt that lived inside me. When the horde appeared, it was not with the wild chaos I expected. It was almost ritualistic, a coordinated advance, their crude banners carried like totems of some blasphemous order. The orcs bellowed in unison, their roars blending into a single monstrous chorus. I fired until the barrel of my bolter glowed dull red. Shell casings scattered at my feet like brass offerings. Kalian's chainsword sang, its teeth wet with alien blood. Yet for every orc we felled, 2 more surged forward, climbing the bodies of their kin. Then, through the carnage, I saw it again, the shimmer of wings in the smoke. They weren't light or metal, but something in between, flickering as if half remembered by reality. The figure stood beyond the reach of my sight, its form too bright, too distant. My heart stuttered. The Black Rage, perhaps? Or perhaps Revelation? Castian. Marius's voice cracked through the vox. Fall back to the manufactorum. I turned to obey, but the ground erupted beneath us. A plume of molten rock and smoke threw me backward, slamming me into the side of a burnt-out transport. My vision blurred, the world spinning. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard screaming, Astartes screaming, and that sound should not have been possible. When I rose, the battle had broken. The orcs were retreating, scattered by their own explosions, but half my squad was gone. Marius lay pinned beneath a slab of ferrocrete, his power pack sparking. I knelt beside him, straining against the debris until the servos in my armor screamed. "Save your strength," he rasped. His eyes, pale and unsteady, found mine. "Do you hear it?" I listened. Beneath the chaos, beneath the groaning of the dying city, there was a pulse, a deep rhythmic thrum like the beating of a world's heart. "It's calling to you," he whispered. It called to Sanguinius, too. The name hit me like a blade to the gut. Sanguinius, the angel, our father. Slain in the siege of Terra, yet alive in every drop of our blood. I wanted to deny it, to tell Marius his mind was failing, but I could not. I felt it too, the resonance of that ancient grief, the echo of wings. "I'll get you to the apothecary," I said, though I knew it was a lie. His life was already fading, his body broken beyond salvation. He laughed, a sound like cracking glass. "No need, I'll see him soon." Our father, the one who knew. His breath rattled, and then there was only stillness. I remained there for a long moment, kneeling beside him while ash drifted like snow. The city burned, but the pulse continued, steady and patient as if waiting for me to answer. When I finally stood, I looked once more toward the heart of the ruins where the manufactorum's shadow stretched across the ground. The whispers were louder now. They spoke not in words but in the language of inevitability. And I realized with a clarity that chilled me to the bone that the voice I had heard since Baal had never been memory or madness. It was prophecy. I carried Marius's helm with me as I walked through the ruin. It was cracked down the center, split like the skull it had failed to protect, and yet I could not leave it behind. The Codex taught that all things must return to the chapter, even in death. But this was not about doctrine. It was about remembrance. His death had weight, and that weight would follow me into whatever abyss waited ahead. The manufactorum loomed in the haze, a cathedral of industry, built not for worship, but for endless creation. Its chimneys spat flame into the night, and the ground trembled with the labor of servitors who no longer knew the purpose of their toil. They moved like ghosts among the wreckage, faces smooth and eyeless, limbs replaced by sacred machinery. I passed them silently, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. At the heart of the manufactorum, I found the tech priests. They were gathered around a pit carved into the floor, their red robes stirring in the heat. Wires snaked into the earth, carrying data streams down into the dark. One of them, Magos Erythra, turned as I approached. Her face was a lattice of steel and flesh, her voice a distortion of human tone. "You feel it too, don't you, Angel?" she said, "the rhythm beneath the world. The Omnissiah stirs in his sleep." "It's no god you found," I answered. "Only the dead." She laughed, a sound like a grinding servo. "The dead are the Omnissiah's true language. We speak to them every day." I looked into the pit. The light within was soft and blue, pulsing in time with that subterranean heartbeat. Data slates surrounded the edge, their runes flickering with unreadable equations. Whatever the Mechanicus had uncovered, it was no mere relic. The air shimmered with psychic residue, thick, metallic, alive. Brother Kalian entered behind me, his armor still streaked with orc blood. "The Xenos are regrouping," he said. "But they're afraid. Something drives them back. Fear?" I asked. He shook his head. No, reverence. Erythra turned her gaze back to the pit. They worship what we found, she murmured. Even beasts recognize divinity when it stirs. I wanted to deny her words, but the pulse beneath us grew stronger, vibrating through the ferrocrete. The red glow of emergency lamps flickered, and for a moment the shadows on the walls took form, wings vast and tattered, stretching across the chamber. I blinked and they were gone. The Magos ordered the servitors to expand the excavation. The grinding of drills echoed through the pit, sending up clouds of metallic dust. As the floor shook, Callion stepped closer to me, his voice low. Brother, you saw it too, didn't you? I nodded. And you? He hesitated. In the smoke. Before Marius fell, I thought it was a trick of the light. But now, he trailed off, unable to finish. The sound from below changed, no longer a rhythm but a voice deep and resonant, singing through the machinery. It was a hymn without words, a vibration that passed through bone and memory. I could feel my hearts quicken, the old rage stirring, that terrible inheritance we called the flaw. But this time the hunger was different. It was not blind fury, it was recognition. The walls trembled. One of the servitors screamed as sparks erupted from its bionic spine, and it collapsed into the pit. The tech priests began to chant faster, their voices rising in mechanical harmony. The pit widened, revealing a vast chamber below, metallic ribs arching like the skeleton of a god. In the center lay a sarcophagus of black glass, sealed and pulsing with light. Erythra's voice quivered. The machine spirit is awakening. Praise be to the Omnissiah. But I felt only dread. The light from the sarcophagus brightened, washing over us in waves of blue and gold. I stumbled back, my armor's sensors overloading. And in that brilliance I saw them, figures of flame and memory, hundreds of them, wings of radiant light unfurled. They were angels, or the memory of angels, their faces hidden, their forms dissolving into the light. I heard my own name carried on their song, stretched across the divide between the living and the divine. Callion fell to his knees, his voice breaking. Father, Sanguinius? But I knew it was not him. Whatever called to us from the depths was older than our Primarch, older than the Imperium itself. It was something the Emperor had buried, something that was never meant to rise again. The light snapped out like a dying star. The pit went dark, the tech priests wailing in digital static. Smoke curled upward and the pulse returned, slower now, deliberate, like the breath of a waking giant. I turned to Erythra. Seal it. Whatever lies beneath, it's not the Omnissiah. Her eyes, black lenses reflecting the faint glow, regarded me with something between pity and awe. You don't understand, Angel. It's not just a machine. It's memory, yours, all of yours. The Imperium's sins recorded in code and bone. Before I could answer, the alarms blared across the manufactorum. The orcs were advancing again, but this time they weren't screaming. They were chanting. The first explosion shook the walls before we reached the surface. Vox traffic dissolved into shrieks of static, and the floor beneath our boots throbbed with the impact of artillery. Callion moved ahead, his chainsword raised, its motor coughing sparks as if eager to drink again. I followed through the smoke-clogged corridors, the stench of machine oil and burnt flesh pressing against the inside of my helm. Every shadow felt alive, stretching, shifting, whispering my name through the Vox distortion. When we emerged into the night, the sky was burning. The horizon glowed with the fires of war, an ocean of green and flame where the orcs advanced. Their silhouettes were jagged against the blaze, hulking forms with crude banners and the mechanical beasts they worshipped as gods. Above them, the Imperial cruiser's wreckage still fell, pieces of metal drifting like dying stars. We took positions along the outer wall. The air was thick with soot, the kind that clings to armor and will not wash off. I could feel the tremor of the buried thing beneath the manufactorum, still alive, still pulsing in rhythm with my twin hearts. Callion muttered a prayer, his voice trembling. The Emperor protects. I wanted to believe it, I truly did. But when I looked across that battlefield, I saw no protection, only inevitability. We were the Emperor's vengeance given form, and vengeance devours itself. The orcs came in waves. Their war engines roared like beasts as they tore through the ruins. I fired until my bolter's magazine ran dry, then drew my blade. The fighting was close, brutal, each impact a thunderclap of ceramite and flesh. I remember the taste of blood in the recycled air, the sound of my own breath rasping through the Vox grill. Kalian fought beside me, silent now, his chainsword howling through bone. Between the flashes of muzzle fire, I saw shapes moving in the smoke that were not orcs. They were too slender, too luminous, gliding through the carnage like specters. I thought at first they were illusions born of exhaustion, but when one turned its face toward me, I saw wings, fractured, burning from within. Its gaze pierced through my visor, through my mind, and for a moment the battlefield fell away. I was standing before the Eternity Gate on Terra, though I had never seen it with mortal eyes. The sky above was gold, but not with sunlight. It was the color of burning souls. The Emperor's light radiated across the broken earth, and in that brilliance stood an angel. Not sanguineous, not any known to our order. Its armor was black as void, its eyes mirrors of dying stars. "You are not ready to remember," it said, though the words were soundless. "But you will." Then the vision was gone, torn apart by an explosion that threw me back against the wall. The roar of the orcs returned, deafening. I rose, shaking, my armor cracked, my mind flooded with static. Kalian's voice cut through the noise. "They've breached the line!" We fell back toward the manufactorum entrance. The tech priests were gone. Their servitors lay in heaps, twitching as if in mockery of life. Inside, the pit still glowed faintly, the light shifting like a heartbeat seen through glass. I realized the orcs weren't attacking the fortress itself. They were converging on the pit, drawn to it like moths to a dying sun. Kalian turned to me. "What is this place, Castian?" "I don't know," I said, "but it remembers us." A shadow passed across the chamber ceiling, vast and silent. The light in the pit flared again, and I heard voices whispering in harmony. I couldn't tell if they were chanting or pleading. The orcs stormed through the breaches, howling, their numbers endless. Kalian charged to meet them, his battle cry a hymn of rage. I followed, though every instinct told me we were already dead. The combat was madness. There was no formation, no strategy, just survival. I cut down one brute, then another, each swing of my blade a defiance against inevitability. Blood and oil slicked the floor. I could feel the pit's light against my back, pulsing faster now, brighter, until it drowned out the firelight of battle. And then something within me broke. It wasn't pain or fear or even fury, it was memory. I saw my father again, sanguineous, not as the statues showed him, but as he must have been before the madness of the heresy. I saw him weep over the body of Horus, saw the Emperor's sorrow mirrored in his eyes. I saw angels dying by the thousands, wings torn from their backs as Terra burned, and then I saw myself among them falling, again and again, across centuries, across worlds. When the vision ended, I was on my knees, surrounded by corpses, orc and Astartes alike. Kalian was gone. The pit had gone dark. The air trembled as though the world itself were exhaling. I removed my helm, breathing in the ash and ruin. Above me, the stars flickered, and I felt the same pulse echo through my veins. I realized then what the Magos had meant. The relic was memory, ours. The Emperor had buried the truth deep within the bones of his worlds, and now it was awakening. I do not remember how long I wandered through the ruins after the manufactorum fell silent. Time had lost its shape. The sun rose and set behind clouds of smoke, but the light no longer felt real. It was as if the world itself had forgotten the meaning of day. My armor was scarred, the blood of Xenos and brothers alike crusted along its edges. I carried no banner now, no signal of allegiance save the faded teardrop on my pauldron. The Vox was dead, the Auspex blind. Even the wind sounded hollow. I found myself drawn toward the city's core, where the ground still trembled in rhythm with that buried pulse. The air was hotter here, dense with ozone and dust. I could taste metal on my tongue. Once this place had been a center of labor. Its manufactorums fed the forges of the Imperium. Its people sustained the endless war. Now it was nothing but a wound. I stepped over the carcass of a servitor still twitching, its voice box repeating the same fractured prayer. Blessed be the circuit, blessed be the... The sentence never finished. It was then I began to hear it again. The song. It rose from beneath the rubble, soft and mournful, like a choir buried under stone. No words, only tone and rhythm, a melody that spoke in the language of loss. I followed it through the smoke, past the shattered Aquilas and burned-out shrines. Each note seemed to strike something deep within me, a place older than memory, where pain and reverence were the same thing. I came upon the Mechanicus dig site. What had once been a pit was now a crater, vast and glowing faintly blue. The sarcophagus was gone, either destroyed or taken. Around its edges the dead lay in circles, tech priests and Astartes alike, their bodies arranged as if for ritual. The air above shimmered with residual heat, distorting the shapes of their corpses. It looked almost beautiful in its stillness. I descended into the crater. The song grew louder, vibrating through the soles of my boots. It wasn't coming from the earth anymore. It was coming from me. Every step sent a pulse through my body, a resonance that matched the rhythm I'd felt since Baal. My hearts raced, my breath came shallow. I thought of Marius, of Callion, of the angel of smoke I had seen in the battle's chaos. All of it was leading here. Halfway down, I stumbled over a figure slumped against a beam of twisted metal. It was Erythra, or what remained of her. The flesh of her face had peeled away, revealing the polished steel beneath. Her remaining organic eye flickered with dim light as it turned toward me. "Angel," she rasped, voice skipping through broken vox syllables. "He is awake." I knelt beside her. "What did you do?" Her mouth twitched in something like a smile. "We remembered. That is all the machine ever wanted, to remember." She reached out, her hand trembling, each finger ending in a different tool. "Do you not hear him? The song of the throne, beneath the ash?" I shook my head. "The Emperor is far beyond this place." Her voice became a whisper, not the Emperor, the one before him. Her optic dimmed and she fell silent. I watched as the faint blue glow of her augmetics faded into black. There was no time to mourn. The ground shuddered again, throwing me to my knees. The song changed, no longer mournful, but commanding. I felt it pull at me, dragging my thoughts apart, rearranging them into something older. I saw flashes, cathedrals of glass and silver, skies filled with light, and warriors with wings of fire marching beneath banners that bore no Aquila. It was humanity before faith, before the chains of empire. I rose, staggering toward the crater's center. The heat was suffocating now. Ash fell like snow, glowing faintly as it touched my armor. My vox crackled unexpectedly, a voice breaking through the interference, distant but unmistakable. "Castian. Brother, do you hear me?" It was Callion's voice. I froze. "You're dead," I said aloud, though the words felt meaningless. "Perhaps," he answered, his tone calm, almost serene. "But death has no dominion here, not where memory breathes." I turned slowly, scanning the horizon, but there was nothing, only dust and ruin. "Where are you?" "Closer than you think," he said. "Follow the song. It will lead you home." The vox went silent again. I felt the pulse beneath my feet intensify until the earth cracked open before me. Light spilled upward, gold and blue and red twisting together like veins of living metal. I stepped closer, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The song filled me completely now. It was not the Emperor's hymn. It was older, rawer, sung in a voice that had forgotten what it meant to be human. It told of sacrifice, of angels who fell willingly, of a father who could not save them. And in its final verse, it spoke my name again, this time not as a warning, but as a promise. The light surged, and I fell into it. The fall felt endless, a descent not through space, but through memory. The light that swallowed me was warm, not in the way of fire or sun, but like the first breath after drowning. I could hear the song everywhere now, wrapped around me, seeping into my veins. It wasn't sound anymore. It was sensation. The rhythm of heartbeat and breath, the pulse of existence itself. When I opened my eyes, I stood within a chamber that was not built but grown. The walls were veins of gold, threaded through living rock, the air thick with the scent of ozone and dust. Light bled from the surfaces like liquid, flowing upward to disappear into the void above. And there, in the center of it all, was the sarcophagus, whole, unbroken, waiting. I took a step closer, my armor's joints whispering. The song dimmed, leaving behind silence so vast it seemed to press against my skin. I realized I was no longer wearing my helm. My breath fogged in the air, each exhalation shimmering with faint light. The sarcophagus pulsed once, slow, deliberate, as if it knew I had arrived. A voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was not Callion's, nor Marius's, nor any I had known in life. It was layered, many voices speaking as one, human and machine, angel and ghost. You remember now. I wanted to deny it, to resist the tide of recognition that clawed at my thoughts. But denial is a fragile thing.
Memories spilled through the cracks of my mind like water through broken glass.
I saw the early wars of unification. The first angels made flesh, their wings not of feathers but of light and gene craft. I saw the Emperor's hands luminous and terrible, reaching into the cradle of mortality to sculpt perfection. And I saw the failure that followed. That perfection could not bear the weight of eternity. The voice continued, soft and merciless. We were the first to fall and you were among us. I shook my head. I am Castian of the Blood Angels. I serve the will of the Emperor. You serve memory, it answered. You always have. The Emperor does not remember you, but the song does. The song never forgets. I reached for my blade out of instinct, but it was gone. My armor, too, had begun to change, its red fading to pale gold. The sigils on its plates rearranging into symbols I could not read but somehow knew were mine. I took another step toward the sarcophagus, and with each movement, more of the past bled through me. I saw Sanguinius kneel before the Emperor, offering his blood to seal a pact of silence. I saw the angels of the lost legions erased not by enemies but by command. And I saw myself, kneeling beside my brothers, wings burning, our names unspoken as history was rewritten. The realization struck like a blade. I was not simply a child of the angel, I was one of those erased, a relic rewritten into existence by a mercy too cruel to comprehend. The flaw in our blood was not a curse, it was memory refusing to die. The chamber trembled, dust falling from above like gray snow. The sarcophagus began to open. Light burst forth blinding and pure, but I did not turn away. I felt warmth against my face, the touch of something vast yet intimate. For a heartbeat, I thought it was the Emperor himself. But no, this was older, deeper, something the Emperor had buried in his ascent. A figure stepped from the light. Its armor was wrought from living flame, its eyes endless. Wings spread from its back, not physical but woven of light and shadow intertwined. It looked upon me and I saw both pity and pride. You remember, it said. Its voice was both male and female, soft as morning and sharp as truth. What are you? I asked. The first, it replied. The prototype. The flaw that became faith. I am what you are meant to be and what he feared you would become. My voice shook. The Emperor feared nothing. The being smiled, and in that expression I saw the sadness of millennia. He feared loss. He feared love. He feared that even angels would see through his perfection. The chamber darkened as the light receded into the figure's wings. I realized then that I was weeping, though I could not say why. The tears hissed as they struck the scorched ground. Why show me this? So that you may choose, it said. To forget again and live as weapon, or to remember and die as man. The song swelled, filling the air with unbearable beauty. Every note was a memory, every chord a name once erased. I fell to my knees, torn between duty and revelation. Above, the sound of distant bombardment rumbled. The war still raged, uncaring of the truths beneath it. The figure knelt before me, its light dimming until it was almost human. There is no victory in ignorance, it whispered. Only silence. Remember, Castian. Remember what it means to fall willingly. It placed a hand upon my helm, and for the briefest instant I felt peace. Then the world exploded in white. When I awoke, I was lying beneath the open sky. The air was cold, thin, threaded with the smell of burnt stone and ozone. Ash drifted around me like snow, whispering as it fell. I could not remember the moment of the blast, only the light and the voice that had called my name as the chamber disintegrated. My armor was cracked, its power unit dead. The crimson of the blood angels had faded to dull gray, scorched by fire and truth alike. I tried to rise, but every motion brought with it a rush of pain that felt too human, too fragile for what I once was. The city was gone. Where manufactorums and shrines once stood, there was now only a vast crater, its edges glowing faintly with residual heat. The pulse beneath the earth had ceased. In its absence, the world felt hollow, stripped of purpose. I could no longer hear the song, and yet its echo lingered within me, subtle, haunting like the memory of a heartbeat after death. I staggered to my feet. The horizon was empty, save for the distant silhouette of the Mechanicus landing spires, their forms warped by heat. I began to walk, guided not by reason but by instinct. Each step carried me through remnants of the war. Shattered helms, broken banners, the skeletal remains of brothers I had once trusted with eternity. I passed one whose armor bore the markings of the flesh-tearers. His body was slumped against the wreckage of a rhino transport. His chainsword still clenched in one gauntleted hand. I placed a hand on his helm, whispering a prayer that felt foreign in my mouth. I wondered then if the Emperor truly heard such prayers anymore, or if they rose into a void too vast even for gods to fill. I had seen his light once, distant, blinding, untouchable, and now I wondered whether that light had always been meant to blind. Hours passed. The landscape shifted from ruin to silence. I crested a ridge and saw something I could not name. A beam of gold piercing the clouds above, faint yet constant. It flickered in rhythm with the dying pulse I still carried inside me. For a moment I thought it was the Astronomican, but no. This light came from below, not above. It was emanating from the ruins of what had once been a cathedral. I descended toward it, my breath fogging through the cracks in my helm. As I approached, I saw that the cathedral was not built in the name of the Emperor. Its architecture was older, predating the Imperial creed. Symbols I did not recognize adorned its shattered pillars. Spirals of flame, eyes within circles, wings that bled into serpents. At its center stood a throne, not of gold but of black stone, carved with precision that defied human hands. Upon it sat a corpse. The figure was immense, wrapped in tattered robes that had once been white. Its flesh had decayed to parchment, but the skull that faced me still bore the faint outline of a halo wrought from circuitry. I approached slowly, reverently. As I drew near, the air thickened with static and my vox crackled to life. A single phrase repeated in machine-voiced chant. He still watches. He still watches. I knelt before the throne. I do not know why, habit perhaps or instinct. The sight of the corpse filled me not with dread but with recognition. I had seen this face before, long ago, though not as it was now. I had seen it in the light of the sarcophagus, in the reflection of memory. This was not the Emperor. It was the shadow cast before his ascension, a man or something like one who had once believed he could save humanity without becoming its god. The air shimmered, and for an instant, the corpse moved. Its head tilted downward, and I heard a whisper inside my mind. You were never meant to remember. Pain erupted behind my eyes. Visions cascaded like fire through my mind. Terra before the heresy, before the throne. The Emperor walking among mortals, speaking with a voice that carried warmth, not command. His son standing beside him, still innocent, still human. And then the moment it all shattered. The golden light turning to flame, the throne of life becoming a tomb. I saw the angels kneel, their wings burning as he ascended beyond reach. I saw Sanguinius fall and the world hold its breath. The whisper returned, gentler this time. Faith is built upon amnesia, Castian. Every truth must be buried for hope to survive. I clenched my fists, my blood burning. Then why show me? I demanded, my voice echoing across the ruined hall, because even angels forget too well. The corpse's eyes flared briefly with light, 2 points of white fire that cut through the darkness. The beam that had drawn me here pulsed brighter, expanding until the entire chamber was drenched in gold. My vision blurred, but I saw shapes moving within the radiance, figures in ornate armor, faces obscured by masks of serenity and sorrow. Custodians. They emerged from the light as if stepping out of dream, their halberds gleaming, their presence overwhelming. The leader's voice boomed through the silence, neither hostile nor kind. You trespass upon sanctified ground, son of Baal. Speak your purpose. I tried to answer, but my throat had gone dry. The light behind them burned hotter, and I realized it was not illumination but containment. Whatever sat upon that throne was not dead. It was dreaming. The custodian's voice hung in the air like judgment itself, resonant and absolute. Even in my broken state, I felt the reflexive urge to kneel. The presence of the Emperor's companions was enough to silence the breath of worlds, and here they stood. Golden giants wrapped in reverence and authority, the living echo of the master of mankind's will. Their armor was flawless, unmarred by battle. The faint glow of the sanctum's dying light mirrored across their visors. I saw no humanity within them, only reflection. I was drawn here, I managed to say, my voice a rasp, by something buried, something he left behind. The leader stepped closer, the haft of his guardian spear clicking against the stone. You speak of blasphemy as though it were revelation, he said. His tone was calm, but there was an undercurrent of sorrow, like the whisper of a prayer spoken too often to still have meaning. What do you think you have found, son of Sanguinius? I saw what was buried beneath the manufactorum, I said. A machine that remembers. A song that called to me by name. At that, one of the custodians shifted his stance, a motion so slight it might have gone unnoticed by any other. But I saw it. Recognition, fear. The leader tilted his head. You are tainted, he said softly. The flaw runs deep. Your blood sings to things that were meant to be silent. My hand drifted unconsciously to my chest, where beneath the cracked armor, my twin hearts still beat in time with that unseen rhythm. Then tell me what it is, I demanded. Tell me why it calls. The custodian regarded me for a long moment. I could not see his eyes, but I felt their weight. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, quieter, almost human. Because once, before the throne, there was no silence. He turned, gesturing toward the figure upon the black stone throne. Do you know what this is, Blood Angel? I shook my head. This was his shadow, he said. The man who became the Emperor shed much of what he was to ascend. Here lies what he left behind. Thoughts, regrets, a conscience too fragile to survive eternity. The throne was never meant to hold divinity. It was meant to preserve memory, but memory decays, it seeps. It hungers. The words struck me like thunder. You keep this hidden, I said. Even from Terra. It must remain hidden, the custodian replied. Faith cannot survive the truth of what he abandoned. The silence that followed was unbearable. I looked upon the corpse again, seeing not godhood but grief carved into every line. The faint light that pulsed from its circuits was irregular now, flickering as if stirred by the weight of our words, and beneath it all, faint but undeniable, the song began once more, a tremor through the ground, through the walls. Through my very veins, the custodians reacted instantly, forming a circle around the throne, their halberds raised. It stirs again, one said through clenched teeth. Containment is weakening. The leader turned to me. You have done this. Your blood resonates with what he left behind. I didn't come to awaken anything, I protested. I came because it called. Then you are its vessel, he said. And you must end what it began. The floor cracked beneath us, fissures glowing with molten light. I staggered as the entire chamber shook. The corpse on the throne lifted its head impossibly slow, the faintest whisper escaping its lips. It spoke a single word, a name, and I realized it was mine. The custodians opened fire, their guardian spears unleashing arcs of radiant energy. The blast struck the throne, but the light only grew brighter, absorbing the assault like breath drawn into lungs. I could feel it pulling at me, a current of energy that tore through armor and bone alike. The memories came flooding back, the angels, the first wars, the moment of erasure. I fell to my knees crying out as visions seared themselves into my mind. I saw the Emperor upon his throne, not as God but prisoner, bound in light and sorrow, his body sustained by machinery, his soul scattered across the warp like embers. I saw fragments of him drifting, seeding memory and madness alike through his chosen sons. Sanguinius had borne the brightest shard, and through him we, the blood angels, carried the echo still. The flaw was not corruption. It was inheritance. When the light finally receded, I was alone. The custodians were gone, their golden forms dissolved into dust that shimmered faintly on the air. The throne stood empty now, the corpse vanished. Only the faint imprint of wings remained scorched into the black stone. I could feel the last of the Emperor's forgotten essence inside me, fading with each breath. The pulse was slowing, softening, Somewhere far above, the war still burned, but it no longer mattered. The truth had hollowed me. The Emperor was not the light. He was its shadow. The light belonged to something else, something older and waiting. As I turned to leave the sanctum, I looked once more upon the fading beam of gold that pierced the clouds. It flickered, then died, leaving the world in twilight. The silence that followed was complete, and yet beneath it I thought I could still hear the faint echo of wings. I whispered into the emptiness, unsure if I was praying or cursing. If memory is sin, then let me burn for remembering. And the darkness answered with quiet warmth like a father's touch long forgotten. The world had gone quiet. Not the quiet of peace, but of aftermath, the stillness that follows when even echoes grow tired. The sky above was a bruised smear of violet and smoke, the last fires of the bombardment dying along the horizon. I stood amid what remained of the city, my armor cracked and scorched, every servo aching with age that no Astartes was ever meant to feel. The wind carried the scent of ash and iron and something else, something faintly sweet, like decay made holy. I walked through it slowly, hearing the crunch of glass beneath my boots, the occasional distant cry of a wounded servitor calling for a master long since dead. The pulse had stopped completely. The song that had haunted me since Baal was gone. I felt hollow without it, as if my purpose had been pulled from my chest and scattered to the stars. I should have felt relief, but instead there was only a quiet mourning. When you have been haunted long enough, even ghosts begin to feel like company. I reached what had once been the heart of the Manufactorum district. The crater was still there, but smaller now, its edges hardened by the heat. Steam rose in gentle columns, blurring the shapes of the dead that still littered the field. I knelt beside one, a child, no more than 10 Terran years, clutching a small wooden aquila. The paint had long since flaked away. The wood was charred, but it remained intact. I took it gently, feeling its weight, its simplicity. For all the glory of the Imperium, for all our towering cathedrals and starships, faith was often found in something as small as this, something fragile enough to burn, yet stubborn enough to survive. I looked up and saw the ships, low-orbit, Imperial in make, their hulls scarred but functional, reinforcements perhaps, though late enough that they might as well have been ghosts themselves. I activated my Vox out of habit, but all I heard was static. The long-range channels were dead. I was truly alone. The silence gave my thoughts space to move, and in that space the memories returned, fragmented, blurred by light. The figure of flame that had called itself the First. The throne that was not golden but black. The custodians dissolving like sand in the wind. I could no longer tell what had been vision and what had been real. Perhaps the difference no longer mattered. Truth in the Imperium was not measured by fact but by faith, and faith, I had learned, was simply the endurance of a beautiful lie. I began to walk again. Each step carried me further from the crater and closer to the rising smoke beyond the horizon. I knew what awaited me there. The remnants of my company, if any had survived, would be regrouping near the extraction point. They would not understand what I had seen. Perhaps they would not even believe I had survived. I thought of Marius, of Callion, of their last words, half prayer, half prophecy, and I wondered if they had truly died, or if they too had become part of the memory that now lived in me. As I walked, I spoke softly into the empty Vox, not expecting an answer. If you can hear me, brothers. I found what we were never meant to find. I saw the Emperor's shadow. I saw the truth he buried beneath the throne. We are not cursed by his flaw. We are haunted by his mercy. The wind answered with a sigh that might have been static, or might have been something else. I crested another ridge and saw them at last, the remnants of the Third Company. A dozen Astartes, their armor blackened, their banners tattered but still raised. They were ringed by Imperial Guard transports, and the air shimmered with the heat of landing thrusters. Apothecaries moved among the wounded, their white armor gray with soot. When they saw me, a few turned. One of them, Sergeant Darnell, his voice sharp through the Vox, spoke first. By the throne, Castian. We thought you dead. I said simply. In a way. He approached, studying me. His visor tilted slightly. You're changed. Your armor. What happened down there? I hesitated. The truth rose like bile in my throat, heavy and dangerous. The Mechanicus found something. A machine beneath the city, a relic older than the Imperium. He stiffened. And you touched it. I nodded. It touched me. He stared for a long moment, then looked away. We're leaving. The fleet's recalled all ground forces. The planet's being scoured. There's nothing left to save. The word scoured hit me like a blade. So that was how it would end. Not with remembrance, but with erasure. A perfect silence, just as it had been before. And the civilians? I asked. Darnell hesitated. Orders are orders, I said nothing. In the distance, the first orbital strikes began to fall. Lances of fire descending from the heavens, turning the horizon to molten glass. The Emperor's mercy burning clean. The irony was exquisite. One of the younger brothers, his voice trembling beneath the discipline drilled into him, spoke over the vox. Do you think he still watches us, Brother Castian? After all this? I looked toward the sky, where the faint shimmer of the Astronomican pulsed through the upper atmosphere. For the first time it did not comfort me. It felt like an eye that could no longer see. He watches, I said. But whether he remembers, that is another matter. The bombardment grew louder, closer. I gripped the charred aquila tighter. Its edges bit into my palm, the pain sharp, grounding. The sky turned white, then gold. I felt warmth wash over me, not searing, but gentle. Almost kind. And in that brightness, for the first time since Baal, I felt peace, not because I had found redemption, but because I finally understood the nature of our existence. We were never meant to endure. We were meant to remind. Every angel that falls carries a fragment of the light he once served, even if he no longer remembers its name. The horizon split open, and the last thing I heard before the blast took me was the echo of wings, not thunderous or divine, but soft like the sigh of a memory released at last. The light did not destroy me. It should have, by all reason, by all law of physics and faith alike. But instead it passed through me like water through broken glass. For a heartbeat I was suspended within it, weightless, neither living nor dead. I saw the fire roll across the landscape, consuming the manufactorums, the shrines, the bones of the city. Every structure, every prayer, every secret reduced to radiant dust. It was terrible. It was beautiful. In that moment, the Imperium's cruelty and mercy were one and the same. When the radiance dimmed, I stood once more upon a world remade into silence. The air shimmered with heat. The ground was smooth, glassy, without shadow. My armor's systems were dead. My weapon little more than melted slag, yet I felt no fear. What remained of the fleet drifted high above, its outlines faint against the haze. I could not hear the vox. I could not feel the pulse of my brothers. The galaxy itself seemed to have turned its gaze away. I looked to the sky and saw, faintly, the shimmer of the Astronomican. That distant heartbeat of the throne guiding humanity through endless night. Once that light had meant purpose. Now I understood it as something else entirely. A cry stretched across eternity. A reminder to those who had forgotten why they began to fight at all. The voice came to me then, not from the heavens, not from the throne, but from within. You were never meant to live forever, it said, soft as a confession. You were meant to bear witness. I knelt in the ashes, the cracked aquila still in my hand. Its edges were warm now, glowing faintly, as if remembering the hands that had shaped it. I pressed it against my breastplate and closed my eyes. Around me the wind stirred, whispering through the ruins like a psalm. In that stillness I saw Sanguinius again. Not in his moment of death, not in the fury that consumed him upon the vengeful spirit, but as he must have been before it all, walking among his sons, his face serene, his eyes bright with impossible hope. He looked upon me, and though he did not speak, I knew what he meant. Every angel dies, but not every death is loss. Some become remembrance, some become warning. A shadow moved across the horizon, vast and slow, a ship descending, or perhaps only the ghost of one. Its silhouette cast a long darkness across the scorched plain, and within that shadow I saw shapes begin to move. Figures in armor, their outlines fractured by heat. They approached not as soldiers, but as pilgrims. I knew them instantly, other blood angels, survivors drawn by the same pulse that had guided me. Among them walked an apothecary, his narthecium glinting faintly in the dying light. When they reached me, none spoke. The apothecary knelt, scanning the broken readouts of my armor. Your vitals are failing, he said softly, as though afraid to disturb the silence. I smiled, though he could not see it beneath the cracked vox grill. They've been failing for a long time, brother. He paused. You fought well. The company will honor your name. I shook my head. Do not honor me. Remember what was beneath the city. Remember what we are. He looked at me, confusion flickering across his face. What do you mean? I reached for his gauntlet, gripping it weakly. We are not cursed by the flaw, I said. We are the echo of a promise. The Emperor tried to forget. We remember for him. That is our burden. He started to reply, but the words died in his throat. He must have seen it then. The faint golden shimmer spreading across the fractures of my armor. Light leaking from beneath the plates like the last breath of a dying star. I could feel the heat growing within me, not painful but radiant, pure. It filled my chest, my throat, my skull, until thought itself became light. The apothecary stepped back, his visor reflecting that glow. Castian, what's happening? I looked up at the sky. The clouds had parted, revealing a single streak of gold across the void, a reminder of the light I had seen beneath the world. It pulsed once, twice, in perfect harmony with the fading rhythm of my hearts. He remembers, I whispered. For a moment, he remembers. And then the light consumed me. It was not death as mortals know it. There was no end, no abyss, only unfolding. I saw the Imperium stretched before me, an endless expanse of fire and faith, each world a single note in an orchestra of despair. I saw the custodes kneel in silence before the throne, their golden masks reflecting the dimming light of the Emperor's dying sun. I saw the Mechanicus chanting to hollow gods, unaware that the machine they worshipped was nothing more than memory yearning for form. And through it all I saw the angels, the sons of Sanguinius, spreading across the stars, still fighting, still bleeding, still dreaming of salvation. And I loved them. Everyone, the voice spoke one last time, now indistinguishable from my own. You knew you would die, and still you chose to remember. That is what makes you angel. The light faded. The world returned to shadow. But somewhere beyond the reach of words, a fragment of my soul lingered. A whisper carried upon the Astronomican, a single thread woven into the vast hymn of humanity's endurance. Perhaps a navigator heard it in his sleep, mistaking it for a trick of the void. Perhaps a chaplain reciting his litanies felt his faith tremble for a heartbeat and did not know why. It does not matter, for even in silence the song continues. And in that song, I am not gone. I am the echo between stars, the memory beneath the ash, the angel who knew he would die and chose to fall anyway.